Day 344 of doing a LeetCode problem every day until I get a job. All right, y'all, we're back again another day, another LeetCode problem where we're doing daily LeetCode problems. And today we have question number 220, contains duplicate 3. The difficulty level is hard, but don't even worry because we're going to keep the solution as simple and easy to understand as possible. But before we get started, y'all, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you need any new Apple AirPods, go in and check out that link in the description so you can get you some. Now let's see what the question says. You are given an integer array nums and two integers index diff and val diff. Find a pair of indices I and j such that I does not equal j. The absolute value of I minus j is less than or equal to index diff, and the absolute value of nums of I minus nums of j is less than or equal to value diff, and return true if such pair exists or false otherwise. All right, y'all, that sounds simple enough, but let's go ahead and take a look at these examples just to make sure we are doing this problem correctly. So in example 1, we have the input nums equals an array of integers 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, index diff equals 3, value diff equals 0. The output is true. Explanation says we can choose I and j equal to, which will be 0 and 3, index 0 and 3. We satisfy the three conditions. I does not equal j because 0 does not equal, index 0 does not equal 3, or 0 does not equal 3. The absolute value of I minus j is less than or equal to index diff. An example of that is 0 minus 3 is going to be negative 3, but the absolute value of that is 3. And the absolute value of nums of I minus nums of j is less than or equal to value diff, which is the absolute value of 1 minus 1, which is 0. So, which is less than or equal to 0 in this case because value diff is 0, so it's equal to 0. So first thing, before we get started, let's go ahead and look at this example one step further so we can make sure we completely understand what's going on. So the first thing we need to remember that when you see I and j like this or like this, just one I and a j, one j, that's talking about the indexes. So this I and j they're talking about, right? I and j, they're talking about 0 and 3. They're talking about index 0 and index 3. So in this case, index 0 is 1, index 3 is 1, right? Then when they write it like this, nums with the I in the square brackets and nums j in the square brackets, they're talking about the values of those indexes. So this is index 1, but the value, this is index 0 because remember the arrays start from 0 and the indexes start from 0 in the array, but the value is 1, right? So nums of I value is 1, but I index is 0. Boom, same thing, nums of j, the value is 1, but the index is 3, right? This is index 3. So when we just write them like this, we're talking about the indexes. We're talking about index 0 and index 3. But when we write them like this with the nums square bracket I, nums square bracket j, we're talking about the values of those indexes. So we're talking about 1 and 1. And that's going to be important to understand when we are writing our solution because we want the absolute value of the indexes. That's what we compare to the index diff, right? And the absolute value of the values, right, which is like this, nums of I, nums of j, which the value of that index, that's going to correspond to the value diff. So we need to make sure we understand that before we get into our code. Then once we understand that, we see when we come to index 0 and 3, we have a 1, and this is index 0. Then we go 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is index 3, So this is index 3, this is index 0. So when we check this first requirement, we see I does not equal j because this I is 0, this j is 3. Boom, satisfies this first requirement. Then we look at the second requirement. The absolute value of I minus j is going to be less than or equal to index diff. So I is 0, j is 3, when we subtract that from each other, we get -3, but we want the absolute value. So the absolute value is just 3. And since index diff is 3, that is equal to index diff. We want it to be less than or equal to. So, or right here, we could look down right here. So since 3 is equal to the index diff, which is 3, it satisfies this requirement. Then we come right here, the absolute value of nums of I minus nums of j with the square bracket is less than or equal to value diff. We come right here, so the value of nums I is going to be 1, boom. And the value of nums j is going to be 1. When we subtract those, we get 0, right? Boom, as it says right here, 1 minus 1 equals 0, and we see that the value diff is 0, so that means it's equal to 0, which means it satisfies this requirement. So we will return true because the pair exists. We will return false if it didn't exist. So let's look at example 2, where it gives us a case where the output is false and it doesn't exist. So in example 2, we have the input nums equals an array of integers 1, 5, 9, 1, 5, 9. Index diff equals 2. Value diff equals 3. Output is false. It says, after trying all possible pairs I and j, we cannot satisfy the 3 conditions, so we return false. So it's the same principle as up here, right? But if you try it with this array, we won't be able to satisfy all 3 of these principles like we were in example 1. So we will return false since we cannot satisfy the 3 conditions. So now that we understand the question, y'all, let's get in the fun part, the actual solution. We're going to use a bucket to solve this. So if you like buckets, I hope you're excited about that. Now let's get started. Now the first thing we need to do is we need a map to hold the buckets of numbers, right? So the bucket is the bucket key and the number. So in order to do that, we're just gonna say declare a variable. We can call it map. We can say set it equal to. We're gonna create a dictionary. We're gonna say int : int, and we're gonna initialize it with some parentheses like that. Now we need to find the minimum value in the array to normalize the bucket keys. So in order to do that, we're going to say let min val equal nums dot min. Then we are going to use a parentheses again, and we're going to put an exclamation point at the end. Now we need to define the bucket size, which is going to be the value diff plus 1, which is going to ensure the difference within the value diff. So in order to do that, we're just going to come right here. We're going to say let n equal value diff plus 1, just like that. Then we're going to come right here. We're going to say for I, or open up the parentheses, I, comma, num, n nums dot enumerated. Put the parentheses, and we're going to open up the brackets. Now what this nums enumerated does is it gets us the index and the value, because remember, when we're solving this problem, we're going to need the indexes and we're going to need the values, right? So that's what the enumerated does. It's going to get us the index and the values, right? So it's going to return the index and it's going to return the value. Boom. Then we need to compute the bucket index for the current number. So we could say let b equal, open up the parentheses, we're going to say num plus min val, come outside of the parentheses, and we're going to divide that by n. Boom. Now we need to check for the first case. If the bucket already contains a number, they must be close in value. So we're going to say if map square bracket b exclamation point equals nil, so does not equal nil, then we could just going to return true. Boom. Sorry, y'all, just trying to clean that up. Now we need to check the left neighboring bucket for a possible valid pair. So this is for check case 2. We're going to say if let val equals map square bracket b minus 1, come outside that square bracket, we'll say comma abs, that's going to get us the absolute value of val minus num is less than n, then we can open up the brackets and we can return true. Boom. Now we need to check right neighboring bucket for possible valid pairs. So this is going to check the left neighboring bucket for possible valid pairs. Now we need to check the right bucket. So we're going to say if let val equals map square bracket b plus 1, come outside of that comma abs, which is going to get us the absolute value. Again, we're going to say val minus num is less than n. Then we're going to open up the brackets and we're going to return true. Boom. Now we need to add the current number to its bucket. So we're going to come right here and we're going to say map square bracket b. We're going to set that equal to num. Boom. Now we need to maintain our sliding window for the size index, of size index diff, and remove the number that's now out of the range. So to do that, we're going to say if I is greater than or equal to index diff, we're going to open up the brackets. We're going to say let old bucket equal, open up the parentheses, nums square bracket I minus index diff plus, come outside the square bracket, plus min val, come outside the parentheses and divide that by n. Then we're going to come right here, we're going to say map square bracket old bucket, and we're going to set that equal to nil. Now if we go through all this and no pair has been found, then we could just come right here and return true. Excuse me, y'all, return false. So let's go ahead and give this a run. Make sure it runs properly before we submit it. Let's see. Okay, we have an error. Sorry, that should be old bucket, not buck. Sorry about that, y'all. Let's run it again. See what happens this time. And it's accepted, y'all. So let's go ahead and submit it. Make sure it stays accepted after we submit it. Look at that, y'all. 55 milliseconds beats 100% of users with Swift. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the numbers I like to see right there, y'all. So before we leave, make sure y'all get one more look at the code. It's the top half of the code. Boom. It's the bottom half of the code. Read it, learn it, love it. And yeah, y'all, with that being said, I hope y'all learned something today. And I hope to see y'all here tomorrow for another day, another LeetCode problem. See y'all then.